Okay, y'all, we got another one today, another astrology video. We got Saturn in the third house. Saturn in the third house, we got Saturn, the planet of discipline, challenges, limitations, um, like setting boundaries in life, you know, and like trying to like build some type of structure. It's a more serious planet, not, it's more like reality based. We ain't too like grandiose about shit. We ain't too um, caught up in our emotions about shit. We need to do things. We need to create some type of structure so there's order and all that, right? Now, our third house is the house of communication and expression of, oneself in their, how they communicate and express themselves to people, their environments. So this means that this person takes a more serious approach to that, or they communicate about more of like how they're trying to go about creating stability in their life, but it plays out differently, right, for like each sign, as I always like go into how it would play out if you had this sign and that sign, right? So we have Aries, Saturn in the third house. So Aries, Saturn in the third house, they will let you know, hey, um I really like to like build this type of life for myself. I want to like have fun with my friends, but sometimes this person can be mm, very direct and be like serious about it. Loud and be like, I can't play games today. We can't have fun today. I have to work on my like money, my bills, my this, my that. I have to put more time into myself and stay away from you people. But it comes off as very you know like they don't like you at all, but they actually do. They're just setting that boundary and shit, being like, hey, you can't be around me right now. you know I'm trying to get my money right. I'm trying to build a life for myself. I'm trying to cut certain things out because I have been one to let other people get me irritated. I'm trying not to be so irritated. I'm trying to see things for what they are so I can like build something, because I have the potential. I see what I want to try to create, but it ain't gonna be easy. I have to actually buckle down and do that. And if I have to cut a couple friends off and figure out who's actually here to like help me out in that, then I have to do that. And I won't let myself down in that way. But it does bring some challenges, right? Because Aries and Saturn is like not the best placement to have for Saturn, but this is Aries Saturn, right? So they are gonna say something about, I need to do this. Is there any way you want to help me do this? If you don't, then stay the fuck out of my way. Because we don't have time to play games right now. We don't do that shit no more. Or we're trying to, you know, cut these type of people out. I'm trying to go where I am as a person who has this placement, right? Trying to cut these people out of my life so I can become a better person, be more mature. But they know what they want, and how they want to create the life they want to create. They might have to cut a couple people off and other things, but ultimately they don't care, because the ones that do stick around are ones that are going to help them build, because they can communicate and they are like basically direct about what they want. Like, hey, I want to live in this type of house and this type of thing. What does it take to get that? And they ask these people straight up, and then these people were like, and then they'll cut off the people who like play games with them, and make them like not so serious, because they're trying to be serious now. The next sign is Taurus Saturn in the third house. Taurus Saturn in the third house. This person already has it about them that they're not going to do shit like that, right? They don't want to. They were never a type of person who like to like fuck around too much and play games. And they are gonna be definitely like the ones who are like, I recommend you guys like not do that. Maybe read some books. Maybe, go to school maybe, you know, look into what your finances are looking like because the way you sound, it's like you have a lot of, debt or you have a lot of, problems, in your life. I'm talking to people who know how to help me get, my life right. I'm building something. I'm building my business. I'm building my, home, whatever it is. You know, these people can come off as boring in their friend group, but they can also come off as a person that, knows what they're talking about. People come to them for, should I like, spend money on this? They'll probably be like, no, don't spend money on it. Put your money back and don't worry about it because later that's when you're supposed to have your shit. As they have a more patient approach to things, right? And like this is communicated through, you know, conversations and shit with their friends and other things. They'll be like more like, you know, they can like wait on some fun shit, right? Because this is Saturn, right? We were talking about a person who's more serious about communicating and in like real conversations. Yes, man, you don't want to fucking play games with your money. You want to save most of that real money. They might recommend like you have like n- one day a year where you get to spend on yourself, if that. They'll have like some type of plan for you. If you want to splurge on yourself, do it like every once in a while, but don't do that shit like every day. They're the person who has you like that. Um, and like I said, they ain't like the person who's like fun or anything. They like their friends wouldn't describe them as fun. Um, but they do not do that. They don't fuck around and play games, and they're trying to like buckle down and build something, build some type of structure for themselves, and make sure everything's in order, finances, home, um, and just like they're carrying themselves in a better way too. They ain't like playing around. They ain't goofy too much. You know what I mean? Not these people. Um, so the next person is Gemini Saturn in the third house. So this person is a communicator. We know this to be a communicator, right? They will talk to anybody who is of like-mindedness, or basically anybody who has some type of intelligence. They deem to be, um, what's it? Professionals in whatever area they're trying to improve in life, and like they're solely thinking about that. They are not playing games. They're not here for the nonsense. Like I'm not talking to people about fun stuff. We don't have time for that shit right now. I'm trying to put my money in certain places. I want to know exactly, what type of stocks I should, invest in, or um, what route I should go down as far as building my business. So if I'm trying to build a business, there's different ways you can go, but I want to take the route that is more suited to what I need as a person who's trying to create a business, right? Or I want this kind of house, I want to go about this the best way possible, something that's in my budget, something that's, you know, this or that. I have certain friends that I have to like stay the fuck away from because they'll just, throw me off of my game, and they ain't really about talking about the logical sides of things. They're just here to like, basically antagonize me, you know, make my life, more stressful. Because when it's Saturn, right, that's when you're like locked in on what you gotta do to like survive, grow, build. They might even cut these people off. Like now that I'm more mature, I don't want to hang out with you at all. I want to go to parties. I want to, run around and use my wittiness for that type of thing. I want to use my wittiness for, in my job, my career. I want to talk to, people because like I know what I'm talking about. I can get a promotion if I lock in on my fucking work and I don't play games with you. And that's true. These people, can get far, when they do that shit, you know. But then they're just known as that bookworm to these friends. They don't give a fuck because they're trying to build their lives up. Now the next person is Cancer Saturn in the third house. This person, you know, see, they think about their family a lot and like, okay, I need to do this so I'm like a better, like I'm doing something good for not just me but my family. I'm trying to be a person who's good in the community, not in the community but just overall. I want to have a job, a career that is manageable. I need to go to work even when I feel like you know everything's going wrong. I need to lock in. I need to not you know show weakness because I am person, right, that is emotional, does get emotional, right, because it's cancer. I feel sometimes like I don't want to, go to work and I don't want to, do this for whatever reason. Family matters. People said this about you and your family and other things, but then you're like, but I am that person who, man, has, that about me. I care about my family, so I'm going to go to work and show up anyway, even if they think I'm, a crybaby or this or that because guess what? I want to do right by them. And ultimately somebody in the family might see me as a good example of, okay, so and so didn't like to go to work, didn't like to always, be, doing that shit. They like to be around the people they care about and like spend time with them, us. But they still, went and sacrificed their time to do shit like that. you know, put food on the table for us to, do this, do that, and that's like their driving force and like, going to like get a job, build a home, for themselves. Like, I want to be a great person to my family. It's not about these other people. These other people, they matter not as much. And they lock in for their family essentially. They might not see things as clearly as other people sometimes, but ultimately they will lock in, and when they do, it's because they family, and then the family that, or if they don't have a family, the family that they're trying to build, for themselves, right? That's what drives them forward, keeps them, working, motivated, disciplined on what they got to do, what actions that they need to take to, you know, stay afloat. Next person though is Leo Saturn in the third house. Leo Saturn in the third house. This person, um, like they'll keep people around them, right? But again, now they're trying to like build, lock in, do what they gotta do. So this person who has Leo Saturn, they're gonna be the ones, dictating where, because it's their vision on how they want to build things. I want to live in this type of house. I want to have this type of income. I want to have this type of job. I have to cut off friends who are not about this type of thing. Um, and it might hurt them, but ultimately they don't care because like it's time to like buckle down and shit. And if they were really my friend to begin with, they wouldn't, bitch and cry about, oh, we ain't doing this anymore. We ain't going clubbing. We ain't going this. We ain't doing that. We ain't, you know, putting on spectacles for people just to like, have fucking, clout or whatever. We're actually, going to work. We're, locking in on what we have to do to be, better in whatever career field we're in. We don't got time for, people play around. We'll use our energy to like basically be an example of like other people will look at us and be like, damn, we gotta be like them. We gotta, lock into our work and make sure we're doing our shit right. Because like we ain't. those fools who fuck around like that. We don't do that shit. Not anymore. This person won't be doing that shit. They'll cut people off, and like the people who do stick around, they'll assign roles to. You're the guy who knows about money. You're the person who does this. You're the person who does that. And when we're doing this and we're building, you know, we have that about us. You're the person who watches our money. You're the person who talks to people about getting us this or that for our business, or we're trying to like build a house, or figure out like how we can have a better house than the house we live in. But we're trying to like negotiate shit with people and other things, and you're the best at doing that. Because they know their friends and their circle, and they know who to like delegate shit to. So basically, they're great at doing that, and they also then keep people motivated. Like, yes, guys, it sucks right now, but moving forward, like we're making progress, and they're the ones who actually, when they're locked in, they enlighten people to like, okay, today was a bad day, we felt this way or that way, but guess what? We got this done, we got this done, we got this done. We still got more to do though. We ain't gonna let this one day fuck us up. And they're kind of basically motivating. Even though they're serious and other stuff, they still are great motivators and shit, right? And if they're locking in themselves, they still attract people to them. The help they need will come their way. I'm saying if they're like one who like is just by themselves and they're doing this shit on their own, eventually they'll find people who like actually want to be around and help them out because they see what they're trying to build for themselves, and they're like, oh shit, that sounds cool. You know what, man? Let me help you do this and that. Um, so the next person is Virgo, Saturn in the third house. This person definitely plans shit out, methodical, analytical. Every little detail matters. Um, there's nothing like wrong with them as far as that. They're always on top of shit. Always have been and tried to be. Um, because this is the third house, right? When they communicate with people, it's very like, okay, and that's cool that you're doing that, but I'm doing this type of thing. I'm building myself up. I'm not. I don't do that type of shit. I hold myself to a higher standard. What I mean by this is like they ain't running around looking for parties. They ain't running around looking for chicks too much. They are, you know, and like they ain't looking for like all the like hype, the you know notoriety per se. Now they looking for people to um, acknowledge them for what they do, and then if they're like at a job because they do perform well in other things, they want to be recognized for that and rewarded properly, with the right fucking dollar amount. I show up every day consistently, and not just that, I also make sure other people are doing their job right for whatever we're doing. I deserve to be paid, accordingly. And they'll get loud when they have to, when it comes to that. And it ain't a feeling, it's like they know because other people, come to them and they're like, well, thank you for, if it wasn't for you, I would not be here right now at the job because you're holding me accountable for, like basically if you fuck around like that on the job, you're gonna get kicked off. You're gonna get fired. And they're the people who are gonna do that shit for people. When they are, because like they're already locked in. Like I'm saying, these people don't fuck around all the time. They don't. And then they do that shit for other people, and then they're like, hey, you need help with this, I can teach you this, so you can do your job better and you don't get fired. And if you're worried about that, dun, 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 dun. And like they're always trying to build like a better like thing for themselves. They could be trying to come together with a certain business plan for themselves and other things, and when I say a certain business plan for themselves, they have it all like, this specific bank, this specific, um, like we'll invest in these specific stocks and other things so we can have our money right, or my money right, depending on who this person is. But this person's not the type of person who's gonna bring up anything really. It's helpful information this person gives, right? It's not fun or too interesting. This is how things work in this career field, or this is how this works if you're trying to get this type of thing, buy this type of car, buy this type of. These are the steps you have to take, and like they'll tell you like basically what the fuck you have to do, like down to the fucking letter. you know but then it's up to you to like follow through, and like you might not like what they say because, well, damn, sometimes it's well, that's Saturn for you, right? um, but they tell you like it is, though, because they know. um the next person though is Libra Saturn in the third house. Libra Saturn in the third house. This person likes to basically know about what's going on in their area and know if people are doing right by themselves in the community. Because guess what? This person doesn't like, and I say this shit every time this comes up, right? They don't like that, knowing that somebody in their community is not doing right, because to them that means they ain't gonna do right, or they'll soon find their friend stumbling when they met this person, right, who's new to the community, and like they're like kind of not like everybody else, kind of different. you know they could have shit go sideways, they could cause problems. This person's like, no, fuck no, I don't like that. They might take actions like once they see this person doing some things affecting their friends certain ways. Oh, hey, did you meet that new guy who's da 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 da? And then this person's like, yeah, I actually did meet that person. He seemed, questionable, or maybe they ain't questionable, but this person likes to know about people in their community because one bad apple can like affect the rest of them. They believe in shit like that, right? And like that's how they create structure for themselves. They like to like nip shit in the bud right away too. Like they'll be the ones to be like, I told so and so to like not do this and that, but they still, chose to. I had the decency to fucking tell them, when you're in this area, don't do this, don't do that, but they still went and did it anyway. You know, and for them, it's just like they want to keep their peace of mind, and they don't want to keep hearing from other people. Oh well, this person's this way. This person, hey so and so, because like they're already known as a person who likes to maintain order through conversation. You know, I like to know what's going on with my neighbor because I see him every day, and I just don't. And like they ain't like necessarily trying to know everything. Just like, okay, how's work going? How's kids? Shit like that. And if they could have prevented something from something, and then the people who know this person are like, damn, some people might be like, damn, so and so's doing too much again, or that's just the way he or she is, and she's trying to, and just wants the environment of our community, to not be polluted by, that type of energy. And they take it upon themselves to do shit like that, because they have a sense of justice about them. and like it's serious. Like it's like we don't want criminals fucking around in our communities where we have kids and other stuff. You know, and that's what this person does, right? Now the next person is Scorpio Saturn in the third house. This person, see, they lock into on their business and other stuff. It's an intense energy though too, right? So when they're locked in on their work, it's like, damn, like sometimes, just like the cancer, right? They don't want to go into work because they, just don't feel like fucking going in. Even if it's a job they like, and people can sense that. Even if they ain't saying shit or anything, just the way they're working and the way they move, it's all said, and it's the intensity of how they like say shit and other things to their coworkers or whatever. And then when they're building something for themselves, like business and shit, they'll lock in and they'll be like, okay, I'll make sure that get this shit done as quick as possible. Um, so I can, have fun later, and later can be like the next minute. But like they are serious though. They lock in and shit when they lock in. Right? And for them, it's like, nothing's gonna stop me. If I have to like kick somebody's ass to like, get my way, I will. You know, whatever. You know, if I have to outwork everybody at my place to get the promotion, I will. Um, I won't waste my time either. You know, I need what I need, and if it's this thing, whatever it takes to get it, I'll get it. I want this kind of house. I want this kind of car. I want this kind of food. Woman, I'll, do anything. I'll sacrifice, all kind of shit, and I will feel bad. I'll feel all kind of ways as I'm going to work, and some days will be fucking horrible for me, and people won't get it. You know, they just won't get it. But I'm still locked in. I'm still doing what I gotta do. And if they get in my way, I'm gonna have to like beat their ass. That type of thing. Because it's like more of a yellow type of person, right? But I'm like locked in on my work, so I don't want to do that. I'll just be like pretty fucking like stern and like, no, I don't do that right now. And you think I fuck around, but I don't. Even if it's true, I don't fucking do that right now. I am, trying to, build myself up, and I'm trying to, um, make sure I got my shit in order. Because they like realize after some point in time that like, I want to, build something for myself. I have to create, something for myself. I have to be centered in, reality. I have to, make sure my money's right, make sure my career's right. I have, something going on for me. And I have like other things that I want to have for myself. I want to be, just make sure I'm good. I don't want to be focused on anybody else. Because the focus is going to be on me after a while, and they know that. Right? As long as I can manage my emotions. So next person is Sagittarius, Saturn in the third house. This person, man, they like to bounce around it and like try different things out, right? So when they lock in, it's a little bit different. They like to learn all kind of things. You know, they find something that they really like, though. Okay. So at first they might seem like somebody who's, oh, that's just so and so. That's his latest thing. That he's into or she's into. She'll be done with that and on to something else, or he'll be done with that and on to something else. As far as like job or career, these people might be bouncing around from shit to shit, right? But guess what? They learn something about themselves through all these experiences at work. And learn what they actually ultimately want. Like, what do I want? I don't just want to, keep doing shit like this. It's fun or whatever, but let me sit back and, maybe I don't want to be around these type of people because I'm realizing that these people ain't helping me lock into like building a home for myself or getting that job that I ultimately always wanted. Even when I was younger and shit, but I like, want to have fun and do this and that. But I actually really want to put my energy towards like this type of career. And, I need those people around. And I do attract people to me because I am a person who like has a lot of energy in it, and I can be enthused at times. I can even motivate other people to get their shit right. But I want to make sure I have like the right kind of people around when I find the right job for me. Um, and some days won't be great because I'm like a person who likes to try all kinds of things. But guess what? I can lock in on my career, my job, or whatever, and find like the fun aspects in every little thing about that job. So like, I don't know, you are a person that always wanted to be working at a zoo, but like you didn't know what it took to do that, and then you learn, and you have to clean up shit sometimes, and you don't like that part, but then you're like, well, at least I'm looking after my son, because you've created a relationship with the animals in this enclosure, and they're like your kids, and like that's how you make it fun for yourself. Like I hate the days when I have to clean up the shit in this zoo cage, right? These animals shit everywhere and other things, but ultimately I'm taking care of my little baby and shit. So and you're turning that into a positive thing, and they create a better life. They can basically lock in on one thing and like see all of the like the positive things, turn the negative into a positive, and make that a career for themselves, and they don't have to then hop from job to job anymore. No, 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 they found a job that they like, and then people know them like, oh shit, he's that person who makes me want to keep coming to work, or she is, because he just keeps bringing that like positive energy and shit like to work, you know but like it's serious. It's not like I'm doing it, yeah, because I you know like it. I don't like to shovel shit, you know, but I'm doing it because, that's my kid, and they do things like that. They still have that creative, funness about them, but it's not like that. It's like, this is a job, a serious fucking job, and I'm locked in. Next person is Capricorn Saturn in the third house. This person's definitely more stern, more serious, more, structure based. Anything that has to do with like building a business, building a home for myself, all that shit takes precedent. Making sure I look right. I'm not a goofy. I'm not somebody who's doing shit like that. I'm not standing out in any kind of way. You know, you can either, and it don't matter to me. I need that for myself, right? I don't really need the recognition or anything. I'm gonna do whatever it takes to get shit done. I'll let you know when you're not doing your part right. So we're at work and you're somebody I work with. I don't like that shit. I don't like that at all. It's just, we're coming here to do this and you're doing other things. That's gonna piss me off. So I'm gonna let you know right now to stop that, or I'll tell so and so that you're doing this and that. Because I don't need that in my work environment when I'm trying to build something. They'll nip shit in the butt right away when they see somebody not, carrying their weight or whatever. And like they're like that asshole, or seem to be like that asshole. But the people who are kind of more um, like them and understand, it's like, okay, this person just really concerned about work, work, work. Everything else doesn't matter because, damn, I gotta have something, and I gotta fucking like make me somebody, and it ain't about getting it out there. I might not even be a person on the internet. I don't give a fuck about that. I just care about owning this street, owning, these businesses. How to make sure I'm, better than everybody at everything. I'm always learning um, anything, business related, financial related. I'm reading books and all this other shit. And I'm doing that for myself. And eventually, if I want to have a family, I gotta have my money right. I gotta have my finances in order. All that shit in order. Career. People know me for this and that. They know that I'm about my fucking business. I can manage them. You know, I can, manage my money. And and they're not a person who plays games too much. They ain't. So the next person is Aquarius, Saturn in the third house. Aquarius, Saturn in the third house. We got a person who likes to talk to like people. They like to build off of ideas they have and bounce off ideas off other people so they can get the life they want. Now this is not a fun person, right? They like to learn different things that pique their interest. But ultimately, when it comes to like, okay, I want to build a business, I want to build a home for myself, I want to whatever that looks like for you, right? Because this person's an idea person, so like my home ain't what their home is. I want to, live in space. I want to make that shit happen. I want to live on the fucking the space station up there. I want to live up there. And that's where their mind goes. And it might not be that, or I want to live in a car and travel around, different places. I'll have to, connect with people who do similarly and like really, listen to what they have to fucking say because they're like minded in that way. And whatever they're telling me, I'm going to do that because they've seen success from it and I want to learn from them. I don't have to learn from other people who don't do shit like that because they're telling me what I'm asking for is like not right because other people like to live in a house or an apartment or whatever, but I want to, travel around in a minivan and do shit like that. But like this minivan has, all kind of cool features and shit like that. Or one day I want to do that, whatever it might be, and then my business, I want to make it pop off this way instead of this way, because, I've seen people have success from that. I want to learn how they did that and implement, similar, tactics, become friends with these people and, they can help me out along the way because that's what they do. That's where their mind goes. Who do I have to talk to? Who do I have to like learn from? I will not, participate in, fuckery when it comes to things. I'm looking for those people so I can actually have the life I want to live. Um, Now the last person is Pisces Saturn in the third house. Pisces Saturn in the third house. We got a person who's also creative, a person who likes to change the mood for themselves and other people. So what does this look like? This looks like a person who, yeah, I don't feel like going to work or buckling down, necessarily, but I will because ultimately I'll feel better like in the future once I've like gone through this time of grinding or whatever, and I ain't gonna like this. Like they already know this because they ain't stupid, or they're wise enough to know, you know, certain days I'll just feel like not doing a fucking thing, but I'll still do it anyways. I have that discipline to lock in and do what I have to do. If I have to talk to these people I don't want to fucking talk to, I'll do it. If I have to not spend money on this so I feel better just for like the moment, then I won't do that. Because my future self is gonna be thanking me a lot for doing that type of thing. But this person is actually going through a lot, like during this like grinding period. But once they start to like see results and other things, they start to feel better and they're like, oh wow, that was a couple weeks. First couple weeks of like grounding were like sucky, but I have this from it now. I have this. I have this. And then they start to see all of that, and they have a more positive attitude towards what they're doing, and then it just builds from there, and then they're just a more positive person. With that, then they attract other people who are like, damn, you're a person who locks in on what they got to do, and I can feel or I just know that you are a person who don't fuck around. You probably cut off some friends that you didn't fucking, want to cut off, but you have to because of da 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 da. You you're a better person because you did cut those people off. You know, and you were able to build this type of business, you were able to build this type of life for yourself and attract all kinds of things. But this is Saturn in the third house. That's the end of this video. Next week, I'll be going into the fourth house, talking about the fourth house next week. But be cool, calm, on the corner, and I got more videos coming to y'all.